Today's episode is sponsored by Blinkist, the app that lets you read or listen to an entire nonfiction book in just 15 minutes. You can try Blinkist totally free and get 25% off a subscription when you go to Blinkist.com/David Pakman. I've put the link right below this video. You know how I've been using this phrase, this is not a rehearsal, this is the real thing, and I've used it so much in a sense that it's become a meme. Well, it's also beautifully accurate to describe what it is that is going on right now in all aspects in the lead up to this November of 2020 election. Our suspicions about the improper purging of voter rolls in Georgia have been confirmed as we have now received news that, yes, the state of Georgia removed nearly 200,000 people from the voter rolls by wrongly concluding that they either moved and didn't update their voter registration or for other reasons no longer needed to be on the active voter list. This is exactly what we believed was going on in Georgia. This is exactly what we believe is now going on in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Notice these are all important states. It's not happening in Idaho, which is going to go to Trump for sure. It's not happening in Massachusetts, which is going to go to Biden for sure, at least not to this degree. The ACLU of Georgia put out a report about this, and it has indeed concluded that this purge was not proper, and it was a way to just pull people off of the voter rolls. Now, the Georgia Secretary of State has said that the removals were no such purge. Everything is fine. This was just routine maintenance on voting lists. And what they claim they did was simply remove inactive voters, because this is a provision that the state has where on some period, some rolling basis, they go through and apply a logic for what is now an inactive voter. Now, what deemed someone an inactive voter? If they hadn't voted for 3 years, if they had not voted in 2 general elections and haven't had contact with the Board of Elections during that time, and if that situation lasted for at least 3 years, that is a very low bar to deem someone as inactive. 2 election cycles where you might not vote really is not a sign that you should be removed from the voter rolls. This is really the wrong conversation, because in many countries, this entire concept of being registered to vote is a lunatic concept. Registered to vote, you're a citizen and you can vote, and you don't need any pre-registration. This is not a restaurant reservation where, listen, not everybody goes to eat at a restaurant. So if you want a table, you've got to call ahead. This is voting, my friends. And about 313,000 voters in total were removed. That's about 4% of the voters in Georgia. And at some interim period, 22,000 were re-added to the voter rolls through December of 2021 because of a lawsuit. But again, this is just a fraction of the total voters that are removed. Now, you might also remember that Brian Kemp was Secretary of State of Georgia when this was done. And he was also running for governor, which he ultimately won by only 54,000 votes against Stacey Abrams. So you don't have to look too far to find red flags in this election. The guy saying we should pull hundreds of thousands of people off of the voter rolls. Not only was the guy running the election, but he was one of the people running in the election. So do not be surprised when this happens again across the country in November. And I wish I had some grand solution to this. Well, ACLU is going to try. Other voting groups are going to try. Greg Palast is working on this issue. But at this point, we've got 8 weeks to go. We have, it is September 3rd. The election is on November 3rd. That's 61 days, I think, 30 in December. 30 in September gets us to October 3rd. And then 31 in October gets us to November. I think it's 61 days. We need to outnumber them in extreme numbers. Check if you are registered to vote. Figure out where you vote. Find out if there's early voting. Figure out how to request an absentee ballot. So we're in the description to this YouTube clip. We have resources at usa.gov for confirming your voter registration status with links to how to register if you have not yet done so. The deadlines in some states are coming up. And then we have vote.org polling place locator and absentee ballot requests. These are central websites, usa.gov and vote.org, which will direct you to how to obtain the information you need in your particular state. They're doing it. It's been confirmed that they've been doing it. They are going to do it. And later today, this is unbelievable. Donald Trump has now suggested that voters commit the felony of willingly trying to vote twice to test the system. I'll talk to you about that later, but chaos is the word that summarizes all of this. There is a very interesting new poll from Fox News that shows Trump losing just about everything and Republicans losing a whole bunch of stuff in November. Now, normal caveats. One poll doesn't tell us anything. We don't go by the polls. We go by votes, which is why no matter what the polls say, you go and vote. Fox News polling is not the same as Tucker Carlson, right? Fox News polling is actually quite well rated. And the actual field work for Fox News polling is done by other companies that are hired by Fox News. So Fox News polling is relatively good. Okay, what does this poll say? Well, first of all, incumbent Republican senators are losing significantly in Arizona and North Carolina. Donald Trump is losing nationally and in some key battleground states. But let's be thorough here. First of all, is the methodology of this Fox News poll solid? It is. It's very popular to say, who's picking up landlines these days? These polls they're only talking to landlines. Wrong. This is a poll mostly of cell phones with some landlines. It distinguishes between their overall sample and the fine-tuned likely voter model, which has a 3.5 point margin of error. That's normal and to be expected. So the methodology is good. On Trump versus Biden, among likely voters, Joe Biden is up 9, 49 to 40. Among registered voters, Joe Biden is up 10, 49 to 39. So that's very close. The fact that it's not a big difference between registered voters and likely voters suggests that the people who are actually planning to vote are roughly representative of all adults who are registered to vote. Now, on the issues, Donald Trump in this poll is still winning on the economy, but just barely. In some polls, Trump is now losing on the economy. In this one, he's winning, but only by 1, 45 to 44. And he's losing on every other major issue. Trump is losing by 1 to Biden on who would better deal with China. Trump is losing by 5 to Biden on who would better handle policing and criminal justice. And on coronavirus, which is in poll after poll, the issue for voters, Donald Trump is trailing Joe Biden by 17. Let's now look at those Senate numbers, because as many of you are emailing me, correctly assessing, almost as important at changing the figurehead at the top, meaning the president, is looking at taking the Senate from Republicans so they can stop putting in judges, so that they can stop obstructing sensible reforms to so many aspects of our economy and our society and our country. So there's a few really good Senate numbers for Democrats. In Arizona, we've got Democratic challenger Mark Kelly up against incumbent Senator Martha McSally. Mark Kelly is leading by 17 among likely voters, 56 to 39. Just one poll. You want to take an average of polls to get a more precise assessment, but plus 17 is a shocking number in a state that was a red state for a long time. Now, the numbers for North Carolina Senate are from a different Fox News poll, also released yesterday. The Democratic challenger there is Cal Cunningham, leading the incumbent Republican Senator Tom Tillis by 6, 48 to 42. Now, that's still going to be an uphill battle. The challenger being below 50 means that when you have 10% of the electorate saying, I'm either undecided or third party, often they will coalesce around the incumbent. So that we have to fight that one. but it is a great sign just 2 months out in North Carolina. And then stunning numbers from Wisconsin, where Donald Trump is now down by 8 in this poll, 50-42. Remember that in 2016 in Wisconsin, it was less than 1 point separating Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. I think it was about 0.7, 0.8. Donald Trump, of course, ultimately winning in Wisconsin. And that was one of the places where Monday morning quarterbacking the election, we heard frequently, Hillary didn't go. She didn't even go to Wisconsin. Fair criticism at the time, among others. We will see Joe Biden in Wisconsin, I believe today, if not tomorrow. So what do we do in light of these numbers? You know the answer. We vote. That's it. If you go and look at the 538 projection for 2020, it still says ominously that 70% chance of a Biden win and 29% chance of a Trump win are the current numbers. Those are the same numbers that Hillary versus Trump had in this projection in 2016. It means either person could win. And it means every vote needs to be cast. And it means you need a plan for how to vote. Again, we have resources that we have been posting on usa.gov and vote.org. Figure out if you are registered. What is your polling place? Is there early voting? How do you register for an absentee ballot? How do you track the status of your absentee ballot? Have a plan. We can't take anything for granted. But this one Fox News poll, and again, the Senate, we're really looking at that Senate where Democrats need to pick up a few seats. And if we lose the Alabama seat, the Doug Jones seat, that'll be one extra seat that needs to be picked up to take control. There is a path. There is a path to Democrats taking the Senate. And if Democrats were to take the Senate, keep the House, and defeat Donald Trump, it would be one of the biggest defeats for the Republican Party in history. Making a president a one-term president is tough. Bill Clinton did it to George H.W. Bush, but it is not super common. The power of incumbency is called the power because it is powerful. We've got a lot to do. We've got a lot to work on. Phone banking, get out the vote, so on and so forth. We'll be here with you through and beyond the election. Make sure you're getting the daily audio podcast. Carry it around with you in your pocket on any one of your favorite podcasting apps, be it iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora, Google Play, and let me know what you're seeing in your state on Twitter, where you can find me at dpakman.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
What if you could read 10 books in just one sitting? That's exactly what one of my favorite apps lets you do. It's called Blinkist. And what they do is take thousands of popular nonfiction books. They condense them down into text or audio that you can consume in 15 minutes. Blinkist makes sure that you're getting all of the important core insights from each book. So it's perfect for exploring a book you otherwise wouldn't have time for. If there's a full book you're thinking about buying, you can use Blinkist to get a sample first. Just think how much you can enrich yourself by being able to soak up an entire nonfiction book in just 15 minutes. I recently read A Brief History of Time, of course, by the great Stephen Hawking. This is a book that I have been aware of for so long, and other things got in the way, and it was fantastic to check it out on Blinkist. Blinkist has books on politics, philosophy, science. They have 27 different nonfiction categories, and a subscription is only about $8 a month, and you get the entire library. But you can try it totally free and get 25% off a subscription when you go to Blinkist.com/David Pakman. I've put the link right underneath this video.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
There are some really interesting posts on the David Pakman Show subreddit that I wanted to call your attention to this morning. Of course, you can join the discussion at davidpakman.com/REDDIT. We now have nearly 23,000, if you can imagine it. I remember when the subreddit was teeny tiny. We now have almost 23,000 of our viewers and listeners participating there. Find it at davidpakman.com/Reddit. A user named Texas Mickey posted, "Call me an optimist, but I think David is wrong about the number of Trumpists in the country. I've heard him say that even if Biden wins, this country will still need to grapple with 60 million Trumpists who voted for him. I won't dispute that Trumpists will be a problem for this country long after Trump is out of office. However, I don't believe that even most Republican voters are Trumpists. I think we underestimate the number of people who just vote for whoever has a big R next to their name on the ballot and move on with their lives. They're not diehards. They're loyal voters who don't really care about policy. They couldn't tell you what Trump has done well or poorly. They couldn't tell you how Biden differs from Trump in any meaningful way. They just vote the party line every 4 years. I'm not saying the Trumpist ideology isn't something to be taken as a serious threat. I only mean that I think it's a smaller sect within the party." Well, oftentimes when we talk about radical Islam, you will hear these sort of concentric circles of the nominal Muslim world, which is 1 billion people. And then within that, these subsequently smaller and smaller groups. And you could do this for any population. You could do it with Christian extremists. You could do it with Jewish extremists, these smaller and smaller circles. You're right that if you start with 65 million people who might vote for Donald Trump in November, not all 65 are the problematic radical Trumpists, that's for sure. But certainly the 65 million are people who decided to go along with it regardless, and that's bad enough in a lot of ways. You can then look at smaller numbers. So of the 65 million, you have some portion who almost voted for Biden, but went with the Republican because of their historically Republican. They might be the least offensive of the group. Then you've got people who actually like what Donald Trump presents in terms of what he says he will do policy wise, but also more his idea of constantly trying to trigger the left. And you like that. That might be, 80%. And then you've got these concentric circles. That's true. The problem is that when we think about the future of the country, it is worse if you are a diehard Trumpist than just a lifelong Republican who checks the box for Republicans. That's true. But it's still a total of 65 million people who voted for it, and if given the opportunity, might vote for it again. So while you're right that 65 million is not the number of, the crazy people with the guns that we're seeing at protests, that's true. 65 million is still the number of people who, if given the opportunity, would probably do it again. And that's why it's extraordinarily dangerous. Another post from a user on the subreddit posted an article about doctors who are alarmed that the US FDA is floating emergency use of a coronavirus vaccine, potentially bypassing some of the trials. I predicted that this was going to happen. I told you guys months ago that it was going to happen. I wasn't the only person saying it. It's not a pat on the back. It's that it was so obvious that this was going to happen. And yes, even people who are in favor of vaccines are writing to me worried that using emergency use authorization mechanisms to push a vaccine out for likely political benefit by Donald Trump is something we should be concerned about. And that's what I'm going to talk about next. I'm glad that it's on people's radars. Remember, you can join the discussion on the subreddit at davidpakman.com/REDDIT. All right, guys, he's doing it. He is doing it. Donald Trump and his CDC have sent out a letter to states saying, be ready to start distributing a coronavirus vaccine in early November or late October. We can read that as before Election Day. Okay. Do not mistake this for anything other than what it is. This is exactly what I predicted was going to happen. I told you months ago, the ideal October surprise for Donald Trump is going to be the big heroic announcement of a coronavirus vaccine, even if it's not actually done being tested yet, even if it won't actually be available to almost anybody until 2021. That is going to be Trump's gambit. That is going to be Trump's October surprise to try to win the election. And indeed, as the New York Times is reporting, the CDC has sent a letter outlining to state public health officials how they need to prepare for what Donald Trump is saying is going to be a vaccine in late October or early November. The CDC has notified all 50 states and 5 large cities to be ready to distribute a coronavirus vaccine to healthcare workers right away, subsequently to other people in high-risk groups as soon as late October or early November. Now, over the last week, we've heard from Anthony Fauci and Stephen Hahn from the FDA, who said that it is conceivable that you could make a vaccine available before the phase 3 clinical trials have been completed if the early data is overwhelmingly positive. We have the letter from the FDA. Let's look at it, from Dr. Robert Redfield of the CDC. It reads, dated August 27th, Dear Governors, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and CDC are rapidly making preparations to implement large-scale distribution of COVID-19 vaccines in the fall of 2020. This vaccine distribution program is expected to be a public health effort of significant scale, potentially involving hundreds of millions of vaccine doses to be distributed across the U.S. CDC has contracted with McKesson to distribute these vaccines to state and local health departments, medical facilities, doctor offices, and other vaccine providers. In order to accomplish this massive task, McKesson must quickly open new distribution centers and obtain new permits and licenses. These applications may be submitted in McKesson's name or in the name of one of its subsidiaries. Going on to say, in the near future, the appropriate state licensing agency will receive permit applications for the new distribution facilities. Going on to say that states should consider waiving requirements that would prevent these facilities from being fully operational by November 1st. The requirements you may be asked to waive in order to expedite vaccine distribution will not compromise the safety or integrity of the products being distributed. Your assistance in helping expedite the issuance of licenses and permits required for this will be critical to the success of this public health effort to mitigate the threat presented by COVID-19. So why not be more transparent and just say before November 3rd? Because that's really what this is about. Now, I've gotten a lot of emails from viewers saying, do you trust the CDC now with this? I have no idea. Certainly, we knew this was what they were going to go for. People have been asking me, if they approve a coronavirus vaccine with an emergency use order on October 29th, do you go and get in line first for that vaccine? I think that's the wrong question, because I'm not going to be allowed to be first in line. And what I mean by that is there are tens of thousands of people who are receiving the vaccine already in phase 3 trials. The first availability is going to go, as they are saying, to healthcare workers and to at-risk people, older folks, etc. I don't think there's any way I get a vaccine in 2020, regardless of an emergency use authorization. That being said, I understand being very suspicious about the timing of this announcement, because I told you it was going to happen, and now they are planning to do it. Here's why we should be skeptical or worried about distributing a vaccine with emergency use authorization. First of all, it's never been done before with a vaccine, or at least a major vaccine that presumably billions of people are going to want. We've done emergency use authorizations on technicalities, and we've done emergency use authorizations on things like hydroxychloroquine, remdesivir, convalescent plasma. Now, how well did the hydroxychloroquine emergency use authorization go? Not well at all. And in fact, it had to be retracted. So that is because emergency EUAs, as they are called, involve substandard or lesser reviews than for full approval. Are we willing to do that with a vaccine? I don't know the answer to that, but it's definitely something to be thinking about. You know, EUAs for ventilators, EUAs for PPE, maybe for some treatments that appear to be particularly efficacious. Okay, certainly things to talk about. Here, I don't know. And this is a White House that has brutally abused its ability to push the FDA to put out their EUAs. And some of them, like, for example, with hydroxychloroquine, have been revoked because it was a disastrous idea. But I am concerned with the political implications here, because Donald Trump is thinking, and it may work. This is the scary thing. The idea would be, if Donald Trump can announce a vaccine on October 25th and make the case that he had a role in getting this vaccine out there. And by a role, I mean something other than just bullying the FDA into approving an EUA. Okay. And that's something he can do just with raw power. But what I'm saying is Donald Trump is going to try to sell Americans on the idea that we have an approved vaccine, again, through an EUA earlier than other countries, thanks to Trump. And the reality is any country could skip steps to get a vaccine approved. The UK could be dosing people right now if they had just gone in and said to the about the Oxford vaccine candidate, let's just approve it. And then Oxford vaccine in the UK would say, we got a vaccine early. We saw what happened in Russia with their haphazard early approval of a supposed vaccine. So the gambit is more people will fall for Trump did it than will be skeptical about the politicized nature of this early emergency use authorization. I want a vaccine as badly as anybody, but it's got to be safe. It's got to be done right. We have a process for approving vaccines. Will it work? Will it work to sway even 1% of the vote in key states could give the election to Donald Trump? Let me know what you think. We'll be continuing our coverage of this on the David Pakman Show Instagram page at David Pakman Show. While you're there, I posted a picture this morning of my new prepping elements to my Instagram, david.pakman. I'm ready for a crisis now. I just don't know what kind. Follow me on Instagram at david.pakman.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The David Pakman Show depends on your support, and the easiest way is through membership, which includes the world-famous bonus show, as well as commercial-free audio and video streams of the show just for members. Sign up today at joinpakman.com. Coupon code saves you 40%. Vote soon 18.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
As sometimes happens, usually about once every 2 or 3 months, we had a very unfortunate last-minute guest cancellation today. And so in order to not delay the publication of the show, instead of hearing from one guest, I'm going to hear from a few of you by opening up the phone lines at 617-830-4750. Starting today with our caller from the 617 area code. Caller from 617, what's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller from 617, I can hear you opening or closing some kind of cabinet. You are on live right now. All right. Bye-bye to 617. That was the opportunity, and it was a wasted one. That's very unfortunate. Let's go next to our caller from the 512 area code. Who's calling today from 512?
Hello?
Yeah, who's this?
This is Andrew.
Andrew, what's going on?
So I just wanted to know, what do you think of some of these, Republican and conservative, political commentators, Ben Shapiro?
What do I think of them generally?
Yeah.
I mean, I disagree with their politics and I don't really watch them, but I don't know if there's something maybe more specific you wanted me to say.
Do you think I have some friends that are Republican, and they watch their videos and we'll debate certain topics or whatever. And I just feel like some of the things that they're saying could be dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No, listen, I guess I should, to be more full, it's not just that I disagree with them. I do think that particularly because they have very sort of manipulatable followers, I do think that some of the ideas that are perpetuated, I can't say specifically Ben Shapiro or one or the other because I don't really watch enough of these shows to be able to say who's doing it and who's not. But much like Mike Pence's RNC speech was very dangerous in how even it was getting Republicans to question whether we can, it's like almost like Russia, where they're both trying to get us to question whether we can safely and accurately do an election. Many of the ideas espoused on these right-wing shows are dangerous. Some of them we know have actually moved people to real world violence. And I'm not suggesting that these shows be illegal. I'm not suggesting censorship. What would be great is if we had a smarter, more educated population that didn't fall for this stuff in the first place.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you for having me on the show, and keep up the good work.
Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate that. Very nice to hear from you. Let's go next to our caller from the 917 area code. Who's calling today from 917?
Hey, David, this is Sam.
Hey, Sam, what's going on?
So I'm 19 years old, and I try to engage with a lot of my friends in talking about political activism and stuff, but I feel like that the only thing that they could talk about is the Instagram stories that they are reposting. And I can't really have educated discussions with my friends because all they do is post stuff on their Instagram stories of just headlines with no real explanation or education for that matter, just words. So I'm having trouble engaging with my friends, and I've actually suggested your YouTube channel, and I'm just wondering what is the best way to engage with these Instagram activists in real change besides posting something on their Instagram stories?
So when you say that they're posting Instagram stories, they're Instagram stories related to news and politics, but they're just basically regurgitating headlines and not really diving into the substance, it sounds like you're saying.
Exactly.
And are they people who are aligned with you politically or not aligned with you politically?
Yeah, aligned with me politically, and usually people who are posting stuff for Black Lives Matter, for a Biden administration. But the way they do it is they're just posting straight headlines with no real information or articles supporting their ideas. So
what I would ask in an empathetic way, and so the good thing is you're not trying to change anyone's mind here. These are already people who are on your side politically. You're just trying to get them to be better activists. And so a couple different things. One, check out my interviews about political hobbyism. I've done a couple of them, which talks about exactly this issue, which is following the news and like retweeting or posting stuff to Instagram. It's political hobbyism. It's not really activism. So first I would check out those two interviews to kind of understand the problem. Then I would consider going to them and saying, what is it you would like people to do when they see you post these stories? Like clearly you're posting it because you think it's important, and you're posting it because you want other people to see it. What do you envision other people should be doing? And whatever it is they imagine other people should be doing, that's probably what they should be doing themselves, right? So if they were to say, well, I post it so that other people will get out there and be in touch with their elected officials or run for local office in order to make change. Well, you could do that instead of just posting to Instagram, right? So I would let them tell you what action they think would be most useful, and then challenge them to go and do it themselves.
All right. Thank you so much, David.
All right. Sam, thank you. Appreciate the phone call. Let's go next to our caller from the 404 area code. Who's calling today from 404? 404, it seems like you may have us muted.
Hi, David.
Yes.
Yes. Yo, you can hear me?
I can. Who's this?
Oh, this is Connor. How are you, sir?
Connor, pleasure to hear from you.
Okay, ditto. So I wanted to ask David, I have a quick question, then I have an opinion I want to hear your thoughts on.
Okay.
The first quick question. I've seen you on a couple shows, say Jesse Lee Peterson's, well, really, that's the only one, really. And I did watch a little bit of when you were on Joe Rogan. But I've heard you say that you're not a Democrat, and that you're I know you're not a conservative, but I've heard you say you're not a Democrat. But I know you for the most part you usually use the word progressive. what would you definitively state yourself as?
So, Connor, I want to make sure I'll answer, but you're not conflating political party and political ideology, right? Because when you say conservative or Democrat, Democrat is a political party, conservative is an ideology. So I want to make sure you're not confused about what you're asking.
I'm sorry. No. Republican or Democrat. Conservative, I shouldn't have used conservative.
Okay. So here's the deal. I am not a Democrat because for me, the Democratic Party is another institution that I don't find it particularly useful to associate with in any formal way or to pledge any kind of loyalty or whatever. It's never been clear to me why I would register as a Democrat. In modern politics, my views of social democracy, which is how I identify, are more represented by candidates in the Democratic Party than candidates in the Republican Party, but that could change. And so the way I characterize my views is I am a progressive social democrat. In practice, I'm mostly voting for Democratic candidates, but I've never found any particular, in Massachusetts, I can still vote in whichever primary I want. I've never lost anything by not being a registered Democrat, and I just don't feel particularly drawn to be one.
Okay, amazing. I'm just curious because I've never heard you, at least from what I've seen from you, I've never heard you state definitively what you are. I would consider myself, I would say I'm more in the middle, probably. I try to be as open-minded as possible, listen to all sides and all spectrums. But anyways, my opinion I want to get to. So I am biracial. I'm also 19. So it's going to be the first year which I can vote. And I don't know how much you talk about on your show. I don't know how much you talk about race relations, but being biracial, I am black and white. Growing up in the South, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I went to predominantly black schools for the most part. I went to a predominantly black middle school, predominantly black high school, and I'm taking college courses online. So it's not really, I don't really go anywhere and see people, but I wanted to ask, I just want your opinion on it because growing up in these areas that are predominantly black, I've been treated certain ways, and a lot of people call it colorism. I've been treated certain ways because I am lighter skinned. Some people look at me, they're like, oh, you're black, or oh, you're white, or oh, you're Hispanic. It never offends me. I just, I'm a little ambiguous looking. But it's, I've noticed that I've been treated a certain way by a lot of African Americans in the area I live in. I've been called white boy, which isn't really a derogatory term, but I've been called white boy. I've been called cracker. I've been assumed because I don't align myself with a lot of political parties. I've been assumed to be a Nazi or a white supremacist, things like that. And it's so silly. And I don't really call it ignorance. And the reason why I don't call it ignorance, and this is one thing I actually kind of agree with Jesse Lee Peterson on, because he said it's not really ignorance. It's more so that's how they're being brought up. And that's what they're being taught to believe,
right?
Is by their parents or whoever, whatever talking head, that might spew the type of things that they believe in. But I've just noticed that it's very common, and it's proof that it doesn't only have anything to do with just me going to school, because I've experienced it at work. I've experienced it outside of work, like in social settings and things like that. And I've had people countless times try to diminish my experience, say, oh, well, you wouldn't understand what it's like being black, or you wouldn't, like, all that other nonsense. And I feel like it's kind of ridiculous, because I don't really think that the reason why there are black people who treat me like that, I don't think it has anything to do with, say, systemic racism or because we're holding them down. I just think it has to do with the immorality or the lack of respect for other people. So I kind of want your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you. Now, my experience with this obviously is not personal. It's more academic and through talking to others, but colorism is prevalent all over the world in different ways in different places. I would defer to you. If you're telling me that you don't identify that that's happening because of reasons A and B, and it's happening because of reasons C and D. I think your experience in that is important, and it certainly passes the sniff test for me. It sounds plausible that the reason you are called what you're called because you don't look as black as some of the people around you. I don't think that that is directly because of systemic racism, and I think your assessment on it is way better than any I could give.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, David.
All right. I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. Great to hear from you. Glad we were able to take a few phone calls. We turned a bad situation, a guest canceling last minute, into a good situation because I was able to hear from a few of you. We will go to a break and have much more right after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The David Pakman Show depends on the support of our viewers and listeners, and one way to keep us going is through Patreon, where you can pledge as little as $1 per month or as much as you want at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. Great perks and benefits as well. Read about them.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
If you ask me which president has most weaponized their attorney general, I immediately think of Donald Trump and William Barr. William Barr has been a hatchet man for Donald Trump, interfering in the Mueller investigation, putting out that insane propaganda letter, pretending as though the Mueller report was going to completely exonerate Donald Trump, despite specifically saying that it can't do that. William Barr has been a player with respect to the protests that we've been seeing and the use of force against protesters. And William Barr yesterday was interviewed by CNN's Wolf Blitzer, and it is a veritable house of horrors. This is one of the sickest interviews I've seen. And what's sick about it is that William Barr, sometimes there are propaganda mouthpieces who know that they need to sort of put a nice coat of paint on their propaganda. Right? They need to dress it up. They need to make it sparkle. William Barr is not even pretending to care about the brazen and disgusting nature of how he is just going to get behind any crazy notion Donald Trump brings up about protesters or about vote by mail or whatever else. So let's get right into it. You've got to see this. This is unbelievable. Barr was asked by Wolf Blitzer what Trump has. Let me back up. I'm getting ahead. I'm shot out of a cannon. I'm getting ahead of myself. Donald Trump has talked about the problem with mail-in ballots is a foreign country could print off millions of them and submit them. And there's, of course, no evidence of that. So Wolf Blitzer rightly asks William Barr, what evidence do you have that's something foreign countries could do? And William Barr simply says logic. The answer is logic. And Wolf Blitzer is visibly taken aback by how stupid this argument is.
Basing that on?
I'm basing that, as I've said repeatedly, I'm basing that on logic.
Pardon?
Logic.
But have you seen any evidence that a foreign country is trying to interfere
I'm saying
in that
people,
way?
No, I'm saying people are concerned about foreign influence, and if we use a ballot system with the system that that states are just now trying to adopt, it does leave open the possibility of counterfeiting ballots, either by someone here or someone overseas. So you think
a foreign country could do that?
I think anyone could do it.
Have you seen any evidence that they're trying to do that?
No, but most things can be counterfeited. That's why we go to the trouble of making our money the way we make it. Now, should we have Minnesota print up our money on regular parchment paper?
So this is the same thing Mark Meadows said to Jake Tapper, Trump's current chief of staff. He said, I haven't seen evidence that it's not going on, which is, of course, one of these completely indefeasible arguments that it doesn't really fall under actual argumentation because it's completely indefeasible. It's mumbo jumbo nonsense, to be perfectly frank. Now, then Wolf Blitzer asked, this I haven't seen a Wolf Blitzer interview for a long time, but he did a good job of really getting down to the heart of the matter on a lot of these issues. Wolf Blitzer asks, of the three countries, China, Russia, and Iran, which are kind of the three that are thrown around as having an interest in meddling in the election, not necessarily in favor of the same person, but the evidence that China and Iran are interfering is, of course, far less prevalent than that of Russia. And maybe you're not going to be surprised at which one William Barr selects here.
Russia, China, and Iran are seeking to interfere in the U.S. presidential election for various reasons, but mostly they want to sow dissent in our country, exacerbate racial tensions, et cetera, like that. Of those three countries that the intelligence community has pointed to, Russia, China, and Iran, which is the most assertive, the most aggressive in this area?
I believe it's China.
Which one?
China.
China more than Russia right now?
Yes.
Why do you say that?
Because I've seen the intelligence. That's what I've concluded.
What are they trying to do?
Well, I'm not going to discuss that.
But they're trying to help who win?
I'm not going to get into that.
More aggressive than Russia?
Yes.
Because the U.S. intelligence community...
Trying to influence the United States? Yes.
Yeah.
Super convincing, right? I mean, this is a real opportunity to talk more generally about interference and meddling. And they could actually have had a conversation about, listen, there's a long history of other countries meddling in the elections of other countries. There's a long history of Americans trying to exert our preferences at the high government level on the elections of other countries. And this is sort of an ongoing thing. And what matters is we protect our system from any meddling. The problem with making that case for people like William Barr is that William Barr and Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump, they've all had opportunities to strengthen our election system so that it is less subject to the manipulations of foreign countries. They've not done it. And of course, the speculation is they've not done it because they think that on balance, the meddling, including from Russia, is good for Donald Trump. That's the reality. Instead, Barr just says, oh, China's really the worst one. And it makes it sort of an adjudication of China versus Russia. The implication, of course, being that China wants Biden to win, which is really a question mark, but it's something that's been repeated. Whereas Russia wants Trump to win. The reason that there's a sort of base rate fallacy with these ideas that if X country wants Biden to win, it's because Biden will be in their pocket. The reality is that most countries have an interest in the more stable United States. So China may well want Joe Biden to be president instead of Trump because Trump is an unstable maniac. Iran may well want Biden instead of Trump because Biden maybe would stick to his word instead of how Donald Trump just bailed on the Iran deal, despite Iran not having done anything wrong. So just because a country prefers one candidate over another doesn't mean that they have that preference for nefarious reasons. Russia specifically, we know because it's in black and white and it's been in black and white for decades. Their goal to seize and grow their power globally is to make Western democracies appear unstable. And that's why they would support Donald Trump. So there's a real apples to spark plugs comparison going on here. Now, Wolf Blitzer getting back to how many indictments have there been for voter fraud? If voter fraud really is the problem you claim it is, how many indictments have there been? William Barr tells us several.
10 years Attorney General of the United States, how many indictments have you brought against people committing voter fraud?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but several I know of.
Like a handful?
I can't, I don't know.
But several doesn't sound like too many.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how many we have. I know there are a number of investigations right now, some very big ones in states.
The president also has said, and I'm quoting him directly.
And Wolf Blitzer is right. In a country of 331 million, with billions of votes cast over the last however many election cycles, several cases of voter fraud really isn't a lot. It's not hundreds. It's not thousands. It's not anything that comes even close to impacting the election results. And then William Barr insists we simply haven't tried mail-in voting. So it's a question mark. It's a black hole. Anything could happen.
We haven't seen widespread fraud, but
so far we haven't tried it.
Well,
and the point is,
but a lot of us. There are several states that only have mail-in voting, including a Republican
Well,
state
this
like
is
Utah.
playing with fire. this is playing with fire. We're a very closely divided country here. And if people have to have confidence in the results of the election and the legitimacy of the government, and people trying to change the rules to this methodology, which, as a matter of logic, is very open to fraud and coercion, is reckless and dangerous. And the people are playing with fire.
Well, I will point out there are 5 states that only have mail-in voting, including Utah and Colorado, Washington State, Oregon, Hawaii, and they've reported over the years they've had virtually no problems. But who's trying to change the rules right now?
I would say the people who want to go to mass mail-in ballots.
But you understand why. There is a coronavirus pandemic,
Right.
and there are a lot of people potentially, if they waited long lines when they go to the polls, they could get sick, especially older people or people with underlying conditions. As a result, a lot of people want to change the rules so they don't have to go wait in
Right,
long
and people-
lines.
well,
they don't have to touch all this.
And the
equipment.
appropriate way to deal with that is, number one, arrangements at the polls that protect people, which can be done.
Now, of course, we have tried it. We have systems in place. We're just doing more of it this year because of a pandemic. It's the same ballots. It's the same processes. It's the same postal service, unless, of course, Donald Trump manages to kneecap it. And William Barr gives a hint about what this is really about. William Barr says, listen, this is a closely divided country. And what that means is if too many people are able to vote safely, it could be really bad for Donald Trump. That's the code that William Barr is using when he says, listen, we got to be careful. This is a closely divided country. That's right. That's right. And that's why the idea from Trump is suppress the vote that we know will be disproportionately a vote for Joe Biden. People taking coronavirus more seriously are more likely to vote by mail. If you suppress vote by mail, you're more likely to suppress more Biden votes than you are Trump votes. So here is Wolf explaining to William Barr that you can't vote twice, that it's illegal. To try to do it willfully, it's illegal, despite Donald Trump's encouragements, which I'll get to momentarily. Take a look at this.
And then let them go vote. And if the system is as good as they say it is, then obviously they won't be able to vote. It sounds like he's encouraging people to break the law and try to vote twice.
Well, I don't know exactly what he was saying, but it seems to me what he's saying is he's trying to make the point that the ability to monitor this system is not good. And if it was so good, if you tried to vote a second time, you would be caught if you voted in person.
That would be illegal if they did that. If somebody mailed in a ballot and then actually showed up to vote in person, that would be illegal.
I don't know what the law in the particular state says.
You can't vote twice.
Well, I don't know what the law in the particular state says and when that vote becomes final.
Is there any state that says you can vote twice?
Well, there's some, maybe that you can change your vote up to a particular time. I don't know what the law is, so I'm not going to offer.
He was saying test the
Well,
system.
if you know what he's saying, why are you asking me what he's saying?
He doesn't believe in the mail-in voting. You're the Attorney General of the United States.
Why does you? Yeah.
Right. Well, the little experiment that William Barr is talking about there would be a crime. We've never seen anything like this. The Attorney General says he doesn't know what the law is about voting around the country, but he's sure, based on logic, as he said to Wolf Blitzer, that foreign countries are going to try to print and send in millions of ballots. What's going on is unprecedented. This is a red alert, not a rehearsal. And next, I want to get to Donald Trump actually suggesting that voters commit what in North Carolina is a felony. The president of the United States said yesterday in North Carolina that voters should try to vote twice. He actually said you should go out there in North Carolina, mail in a vote, and then on election day, go and try to vote. Now, Donald Trump is suggesting this as a sort of test of our election system. Donald Trump has tried to make the public believe that our voting systems are so terrible, so antiquated, so bogus that people could easily get away with mailing in a ballot and then going and voting, and then your vote is counted twice. Now, if the systems are working correctly, I've explained this to you. If you have sent in a ballot and then you go in to vote in person, it will show up. You've already voted. We've already received your ballot via absentee. If the opposite happens, imagine for a moment that you send in a ballot via mail, but it hasn't been received on election day. You go in and vote on election day, and you're allowed to. And then the next day, your mail-in ballot is received. That ballot would not be counted because you've already been checked off as having voted. Now, of course, in a country of 331 million, anything can happen. And anecdotally, there are probably some cases of double votes getting by people, much like there are cases of voting machines going wrong. And you press one person and it accidentally, or because of manipulation, as some would say, casts a ballot for the other guy or gal. It's a country of 331 million people. But the idea that that's widespread and the idea that that's a good way to win an election is absolutely laughable. Well, it's also a felony in North Carolina. And here is Donald Trump encouraging voters to commit a crime. Take a look at this.
Well, they'll go out and they'll vote, and they're going to have to go and check their vote by going to the poll and voting that way, because if it tabulates, then they won't be able to do that. So let them send it in and let them go vote. And if their system's as good as they say it is, then obviously they won't be able to vote. If it isn't tabulated, they'll be able to vote. So that's the way it is. But send in your ballots, send them in strong, whether it's solicited or unsolicited. The absentees are fine. We have to work to get them. It means something. And you send them in, but you go to vote. And if they haven't counted it, you can vote. So that's the way I view it.
So this is a crime. This is a crime. The law actually says intentionally double voting is a crime. Put aside the fact that it really would not work unless something goes wrong. As I mentioned earlier, if you mail it in, you wouldn't be allowed to get an in-person ballot. If you vote in person and then a mail-in ballot comes in, the mail-in ballot would be considered spoiled. But this is a felony in North Carolina. And in an interview last year, Kim Wyman, who's the Secretary of State in Washington State, where they've been doing vote by mail for years, she said that these double voting scenarios are extremely rare. She said, quote, "We can usually run a list of people who have appeared to vote more than once. Out of 3.5 million ballots in 2018, it appears 100 people may have voted more than once. Counties are checking. 100 people out of 3.5 million ballots. And of course, of those 100, many of them were caught. This is the number of people who tried to vote more than once." And Kim Wyman added, "Is it perfect? No. Is there rampant fraud? No. Do people sometimes make mistakes? Yes." Now, here's the kicker. Donald Trump is not only suggesting that voters commit a crime, because it is a crime to willfully go and try to vote twice. Donald Trump committed a crime. Donald Trump was in North Carolina when he said this. And in North Carolina, it is a felony for, quote, "any person with intent to commit a fraud, to register or vote at more than one precinct or more than one time, or to induce another to do so." So voting more than once is against the law and is a felony in North Carolina. And suggesting to other people that they do it is also a crime in North Carolina. And voting more than once is also illegal under federal law. And all of this is really focused around doing one thing: cast doubt on election results in advance, so that if it's close, if it's not close, quite frankly, no matter what the results are, Donald Trump will be able to say, "I've been telling you all along. I've been telling you all along. It's rigged, rigged, rigged." And that's exactly what he's doing. Trump is committing crimes in front of cameras in order to do it. And who knows how many of his supporters are going to be induced to commit a crime based on what Donald Trump said yesterday. We have to end this. We have to get this malignancy out of the White House. And he's going to do anything he can think of: announcing the vaccine, suggesting people test the system, dissuading people from voting, post office, foreign meddling. It's all in play. And we have to overwhelm the vote in order to prevent it. You know that that's the way to do it at this point, 8 weeks out. I know that it's the way to do it as well. We have a voicemail number that you can call whenever you please. That number is 219-2-DAVID-P. Here is a very interesting voicemail weighing in about Donald Trump's weaponization of soup, which we covered yesterday. Take a listen to this.
Hey, David. I just wanted to call in because I thought of a little theory that I wanted to get your thoughts on.
Yeah.
So, as you know, like, Trump has recently begun talks of, like, the weaponization of soup in bag and canned forms.
Right.
And I think that might just be why he was so concerned about the cupboards being bare when he got into office.
Right.
Because, you know, like, we were out of bullets. The cupboards were bare. Like, we were completely defenseless, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, no cans. I would wager no bags of soup.
Yeah, this is interesting. You know, Donald Trump has been using this phrase that when he took over from Barack Obama, the cupboards were bare. And it's weird to talk about cupboards, but where do people keep cans of soup? They typically keep them in cupboards. And maybe what Donald Trump meant was that soup cans, which he now has made clear he considers weapons in that weird rant yesterday, the cupboard had no cans of soup. That is absolutely crazy. But it makes about as much sense as everything else that Donald Trump says. So I'm glad you're thinking to our viewer who called in. We have a great bonus show for you today. Nancy Pelosi has handed Trump a gift, and I'm going to tell you what that is. Hoboken is going to be suing fossil fuel companies over flooding, saying it is a climate change issue. And I am going to give you the latest updates on the census. I had some interactions recently with census workers, safe ones, wearing masks, of course. All of those stories and more on the bonus show. Get instant access to the bonus show by becoming a member at joinpakman.com. Thanks so much for watching today's full episode of the show. Just a reminder, today's sponsor is Blinkist, the app that lets you read or listen to an entire nonfiction book in just 15 minutes. You can try Blinkist for free and save 25% off of a subscription when you go to Blinkist.com/David Pakman. I've also included the link right underneath this video.